Hey everyone, I'm Conley. Hope you're doing great wherever you're tuning in from tonight. Because what I'm about to walk you through might be one of the biggest military developments in the Western Hemisphere in decades. As tensions keep rising between the United States and the regime of Nicolás Maduro, something massive just happened. President Donald Trump has officially ordered a powerful U.S. asset into the region. And make no mistake, this isn't a symbolic move. It's a signal that the United States is prepared to use real muscle if necessary. Now, before we dive into the details, a quick reminder. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the bell so you don't miss updates. It's totally free and it keeps us alive on YouTube. Now let's unpack what's actually unfolding down south. Over the last few months, Washington has quietly built up an unprecedented military presence around the Caribbean. The stated goal is to crack down on drug smuggling operations that funnel narcotics north into the United States. But anyone paying attention knows this is about far more than smugglers. The real focus is Venezuela, a nation still controlled by the Maduro dictatorship, a regime that's kept its citizens starving and silenced while propping itself up through corruption, cartels, and oil money. Inside Venezuela, people are crying for help, crying for freedom, desperate to be released from the boot of a thug who refuses to let go of power. And now, the United States is positioning itself to answer that cry. According to satellite imagery, flight tracking data, and multiple intelligence leaks reviewed by the New York Times, USP. Military aircraft began operating out of El Salvador in mid-October 2025. That might sound routine, but it's not. This is the first time in modern history that El Salvador has hosted American attack planes capable of engaging targets on land and at sea in this particular region. And these aren't ordinary aircraft. One of them is a monster. The AC-130J Ghostrider, a flying gunship that can rain down fire from the sky with terrifying precision. Let's take a second to appreciate what that means. The AC-130J is the latest and most advanced version of the famous Spectre and Spooky gunships that U.S. Special Operations have used for decades. This version was officially named Ghostrider in May 2012, completed testing in June 2015, and reached initial operational capability in 2017. Full operational status was projected for fiscal year 2025, which is exactly now. It belongs to the 73rd Special Operations Squadron, activated at Hurlburt Field, Florida, on February 23, 2018. The final delivery took place in November 2017. So yes, this thing is fully combat ready. Its armament is staggering, a precision strike package that includes both a 30mm and a 105mm cannon. Standoff-guided munitions like the GBU-39 small-diameter bomb, the GBU-69 small glide munition, AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, and AGM-176 Griffin missiles. In plain English, it's a war machine built to vaporize anything it targets, ships, vehicles, or entire compounds. When the Ghostrider circles overhead, negotiations are officially over. Now the Times analysis also revealed two other aircraft at that same El Salvador base. The first is a P-8A Poseidon, a Navy reconnaissance plane that can collect intelligence from thousands of feet up. It's designed for anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare, but it doubles as one of the most capable spy planes on Earth. It can deploy torpedoes and even fire anti-ship cruise missiles. The second aircraft spotted was an unmarked C-40 Clipper, a military adaptation of the Boeing 737-700 business jet. And here's where things get interesting. The plane carried no insignia, no tail markings, nothing that links it to a specific branch. According to flight data, it's been operating out of El Salvador since mid-October and often flies in formation with surveillance aircraft. Why does that matter? Because unmarked aircraft in a deployment zone usually mean one thing: black operations. You don't fly special mission units on Delta or American Airlines. You use an unmarked Air Force jet to move them quietly and safely. That's how covert teams operate, and that's exactly what the intelligence trail suggests is happening right now. Meanwhile, more than 10,000 U.S. troops have been repositioned across the region, supported by drones, bombers, and nearly a dozen Navy warships. Soon, they'll be joined by the Navy's most powerful capital ship, the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. Once that carrier group arrives, any potential strike becomes exponentially more effective. A carrier isn't just a floating runway, it's a complete combat ecosystem. Fighter jets, electronic warfare platforms, logistics hubs, everything you need to sustain operations for weeks. That's why most defense insiders believe no airstrikes will begin until the Ford arrives on station. When it does, every scenario on the table becomes real. Now, a lot of people ask, is this really about narcotics? Or is it the prelude to war with Venezuela? The answer is, both could be true. Officially, the U.S. calls it a counter-narcotics mission. Unofficially, it's about leverage. When you park 10,000 troops, drones, bombers, and a carrier off a dictator's coast, you're sending a message: step down or get knocked down. Inside Venezuela, intelligence sources say Maduro and his generals are panicking. They've been moving missile batteries along the coastline and the Colombian border. They're fortifying bunkers. They know what's coming if Washington gives the green light. According to The Atlantic, private intermediaries claim Maduro is terrified and might even accept a managed exit, essentially exile, if the U.S. guarantees his safety and lifts the multi-million-dollar bounties placed on his head. Reports suggest he'd take his money and flee to Moscow or another friendly capital. It's not a stretch. We've seen this play before in history. Dictators talk tough until they realize the bombs are real. The same New York Times report outlined 3 strategic options presented to President Trump for removing Maduro. Let's go through them. Option 1. Targeted airstrikes against military facilities involved in drug trafficking. The goal would be to cripple Venezuela's air defenses and destroy the infrastructure keeping Maduro in power. If the regime's generals suddenly found themselves unprotected, loyalty could collapse overnight. Option 2. Sending U.S. Special Operations units, think Delta Force or Navy SEAL Team 6, to capture or eliminate Maduro directly. To bypass legal restrictions on assassinating foreign leaders, the administration could classify him as the head of a narco-terrorist organization. That same reasoning already justifies U.S. airstrikes against smuggling boats in international waters. Option 3. A complex operation to seize and secure Venezuela's main airfields and oil infrastructure. This one's the riskiest. It would require American counter-terror units to fight on the ground, possibly in dense urban areas like Caracas. The human cost potential, for civilians and commandos alike, would be significant. But if successful, it would effectively decapitate the regime and allow a provisional government to take control within days. Each of these options carries enormous consequences. Airstrikes could spark a regional backlash, special operations raids could turn messy fast, and a full seizure of infrastructure could drag the U.S. into nation-building, something America's exhausted with after 2 decades of the Middle East. Still, military analysts say the U.S. buildup looks like preparation for any of the 3 scenarios. Washington wants flexibility, the ability to strike hard or to pressure Maduro into surrender without firing a shot. Let's talk a bit more about the Ghostrider, because if this aircraft gets involved, it's a whole different level of firepower. The AC-130J is a modified C-130 Hercules transport, rebuilt for war. It's slow, it's big, and it's armed to the teeth. A typical mission has it circling a target at 10,000 feet, unleashing 30mm rounds and 105mm shells, while precision bombs and missiles handle fortified targets. The Ghostrider can loiter for hours, providing persistent close air support that no fighter jet can match. It's the ultimate nightmare in the sky. When America cuts the Ghostrider loose, it doesn't come to negotiate. It comes to end a fight. If Maduro tries to flee in a convoy toward an airfield, that gunship would track, engage, and vaporize everything in its sights before he even reaches the runway. The unmarked C-40 Clipper deserves attention too. Official data shows it can carry 60,000 pounds of fuel and between 40 and 111 passengers depending on configuration. It was the first military aircraft the U.S. purchased using commercial off-the-shelf acquisition practices that happened back in August 2000. Originally, the Air Force used it to replace aging C-137 jets, but when you see an unmarked C-40 parked beside an AC-130J and a P-8A Poseidon, you know this isn't routine logistics. Something secret is moving behind the curtain. Meanwhile, official Pentagon statements confirm at least 16 lethal strikes so far on boats allegedly tied to smuggling networks. That's already a sharp escalation compared with previous years. Each strike sends a message. American patience is gone. The U.S. isn't waiting for criminals to reach its shores. It's hunting them down before they get close. All of this fits into a broader geopolitical puzzle. Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves. China and Russia both have deep financial stakes there. Loans, refineries, weapons contracts. So when America moves in, it's not just about Venezuela. It's about signaling to Beijing and Moscow that the Western Hemisphere remains a red line. The Monroe Doctrine might sound old-fashioned, but in Washington circles, it's alive and well. Let's zoom out a bit. This buildup didn't start overnight. By late August 2025, U.S. forces had already begun staging in the Caribbean. Drones and bombers conducted counter-narcotics patrols, but flight paths showed patterns that look more like surveillance grids over Venezuela's northern coast. Then, in mid-October, the El Salvador deployment became visible through commercial satellite data. Analysts spotted the AC-130J's unique shadow on the runway, and aviation enthusiasts picked up its call sign on open-source radios. By early November, the dots connected, and the Times ran the story confirming what insiders already suspected. What happens next depends on politics as much as strategy. The White House wants Maduro gone but prefers a low-cost exit, force him out without a major war. The Pentagon, on the other hand, always plans for worst case. That's why every scenario, from surgical strike to full intervention, is ready on paper. If history is a guide, dictators usually fold when pressure gets real. The question is whether Maduro believes the U.S. will actually pull the trigger. If the Ford Carrier Group shows up off his coast, backed by bombers and special operations units staging from El Salvador, that belief might become reality. And while all this plays out, the humanitarian crisis inside Venezuela keeps worsening. Millions have fled across borders. Hospitals are running on fumes. Inflation has eaten savings, and the once wealthy oil state is now a shadow of itself. For ordinary Venezuelans, any outcome that ends the dictatorship feels like salvation. For Washington, it's about restoring stability in its own backyard and proving that American deterrence still means something. Let's circle back to the broader meaning of this deployment. The combination of assets, the Ghostrider gunship, the Poseidon recon plane, the C-40 transport, the carrier Ford, and 10,000 troops, isn't just a hammer looking for a nail. It's a statement about modern American warfare. Instead of invading first and asking questions later, the U.S. is assembling a pressure ecosystem, overwhelming surveillance, precision strike capacity, and the credible threat of special operations raids. That mix gives Washington both hard power and diplomatic leverage. Still, it's worth asking what happens if any of these aircraft actually fire. Venezuela's air defenses include older Russian-made systems, the S-300VM Ante-2500, but analysts doubt they could stop a coordinated American assault. The Ghostrider would operate at night, beyond radar coverage, guided by drones and electronic warfare aircraft. A first wave could destroy radar and communication nodes, opening the door for everything else. Within hours, command centers could be gone. That's the level of capability sitting in El Salvador right now. From the American side, the risk isn't tactical, it's political. A war in the hemisphere could ignite debates at home, but public sentiment, especially among older Americans, remains strongly anti-dictator and pro-freedom. That's why this story resonates so much. People see Venezuela's suffering, they remember the Cold War, and they understand that sometimes peace requires strength. Now, to everyone watching, this isn't fear-mongering, it's context. The United States has placed its most advanced special operations assets within striking distance of Caracas. Whether they're used or not depends on decisions being made right now in Washington. The intelligence community's read is that Maduro's regime is fracturing. Generals are hedging their bets. Some are reaching out through back channels to guarantee safe passage if the regime falls. The pressure's working, and that's exactly how Conley sees it. You don't need to fire every weapon to win. Sometimes just showing them and letting your enemy know you're ready to use them is enough. That's what deterrence looks like in 2025, so here's where we stand. An AC-130J Ghostrider, fully armed and operational, stationed in El Salvador since mid-October. A P-8A Poseidon spy plane, capable of torpedoes and cruise missiles, conducting surveillance across the region. An unmarked C-40 Clipper, likely transporting special mission teams. A buildup of roughly 10,000 troops, drones, bombers, and warships awaiting the USS Gerald R. Ford. At least 16 confirmed lethal strikes on smuggling boats. 3 military options sitting on the president's desk: airstrikes, special ops raids, or seizing infrastructure. Every one of those pieces fits into a puzzle that ends with one possible headline: the Maduro regime collapses. Whether that happens through diplomacy or force, the clock is ticking. So what does Conley think? Honestly, this is the most serious U.S. military posture in Latin America in a generation. And it's not bluff. America doesn't move carriers and Ghostriders around for fun. Every deployment costs millions per day. You only do that when the commander-in-chief wants to send an unmistakable message. At the same time, the move strengthens America's partnerships. El Salvador's cooperation shows how far relations have come since the Cold War. President Bukele has worked closely with Washington on immigration and security. Letting U.S. forces operate from his main international airport is a huge vote of trust, and a signal to other Central American nations that standing with the U.S. brings protection and investment. Meanwhile, allies across the hemisphere are quietly cheering. Colombia, Brazil, Panama, they all share borders or concerns with Venezuela. None of them want instability spreading. If America can neutralize the threat without a full-scale war, That's a win for everyone. Back in Caracas, reports say Maduro has doubled his personal security and rarely sleeps in the same place twice. He knows the Ghostrider exists. He's seen the footage from Iraq and Afghanistan, where those cannons turn night into daylight. If he truly believes one could appear over his convoy, he may soon decide Moscow's winter is safer than Venezuela's heat. So that's the situation as of November 8th, 2025. And it's changing fast. Every hour brings new intelligence, new troop movements, new diplomatic signals. I'll keep tracking it for you. Before we wrap up, remember, the story here isn't just about one dictator. It's about how America projects strength in a world that's getting more chaotic. Whether it's the Pacific, the Middle East, or our own hemisphere, deterrence matters. The men and women operating those aircraft aren't warmongers. They're professionals trained to keep the peace by being ready for war. All right, that's it for tonight's report. If you found this breakdown useful, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next update. It costs you nothing and helps us keep independent reporting alive. And I want to hear from you. Do you think the U.S. should strike Maduro's regime or push him out through pressure? Drop your thoughts below. I'm Conley. This is the Conley Report, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay informed, and God bless America.